Hello, mate. How are you? Can I just change that background because that's better, isn't it? Right. How are you? How are you?
It's been a week. It really
It has
has.
for you. Oh, mate, you've had two major things go on in your life recently, haven't you?
Yeah. One was rubbish and the other one was incredible. So it couldn't have been a more contrasting week if it tried, mate.
Yes, indeed, mate. And I think really what we'll bring up, because what I don't want to do is make you cry. Okay, so that's the main thing. But this was just for everyone here. Then this was the main today. If I just put that on main picture so people can read that. So you lost Rory, bless his heart, bless his cotton socks. What a wonderful!
Yeah.
I was so honoured to have met Rory because he is such a gentle giant, a wonderful, wonderful dog, wasn't he? And
Yeah.
he loved his place by the fire.
Yeah, incredible boy. You know what? Anybody who's ever had a dog or a pet knows just how much they mean to you and how much they take up of your life. And then when they're gone, there's a big hole left. And you know, Tia, bless her, is really struggling, and we're all really struggling. But
I know.
it's
Little.
I said to her, it hurts because he loved you and you loved him, and you need to be proud of the fact that you can have that relationship with another being. So, but it's been a tough week. It really has. I know he wasn't well, and it was definitely the right time, but it doesn't make it any easier. It's still just as hard. So that was the week. And if you don't want me to cry, look at him.
I know. So I'm just pushing those buttons now. But that's really, I mean, a lovely dog, and must be so for all of you. But I know Tia, it's going to be her first sort of real maybe bereavement. I don't want to go into if you've had others, but as far as
she's had a few other dogs go. So Millie was like her sidekick. He went a few years ago, and she struggled. But you know, Tia's obviously she's growing up now, and she's really into her dog training, and she really understands dogs, and she was really there for the last sort of 6 months. She was his absolute rock. If he needed anything, because that's the sort of person she is. She was there, and in fact, he very rarely wanted for anything because she was there. So she's got this massive hole in her life that nothing will fill. I mean, she's got. I mean, her Harper, our Frenchie, is her dog. And Harper's actually grieving as well because Harper and Rory were
such a character. The two of them were little and large, weren't they?
They adored each other. So even poor little Harper's struggling, and it is proven. It's been scientifically proven that dogs do feel grief. So we're just helping everybody's helping everybody through it. Family has always been important to us, but at the moment it's really, really important. So,
and I just see it's an important part to go through to release that stress and things. So and unashamedly feel that grief. And it's what I go on all about.
Anybody say to you that if you're grieving for an animal, it's wrong or it's pathetic or it's stupid? It's not. It's the same grief, and some people find it worse than the grief you have for a family member. So, Tia's teachers have been brilliant, and they understand, and they've been supportive. So and if you're grieving for an animal, it hurts as much, if not more, in some people's cases than a family member.
And I think I heard that it was a funeral. I think it was Princess Diana's funeral or something, and somebody said the price of love is grief. And it's so true, isn't it? You have that at the end, no matter what, and it hurts every single time. So just to let everyone know, Ian Puleston Davies, we can't see him here at the moment, but he is in the green room, and he will be with us shortly. We're also just going to quickly talk about, and I mean, you will have, he is phenomenal. I spoke to him this morning, and we've just been in fits of laughter all the time talking about his, certain parts of his career and whatever. But there's some really important stuff, which is fascinating. I've found fascinating about OCD. And people just think it's about tidying up. People who like tidying up and putting the cans labels right is the typical sort of stereotypical thing of it, isn't it? But it isn't that. It's very much it's something, but it's seriously debilitating disorder, which leads to the sufferer to have unwanted intrusive thoughts, rendering day-to-day life a living nightmare. And we're going to have some sort of experiences of that, and actually how coping mechanisms and whatever. But also, I think really important at the moment we've got to cover, isn't it, is this. Ta-da, right. Very successful week this week so far. It's gone to the Lords, yes?
Oh my God. Wow. I mean, anybody who didn't know, Finn's Law Part 2, it's the increase in sentencing for the Animal Welfare Act, and that includes service animals. It's what we wanted from the beginning, a 5-year maximum sentence. Yes, we'll start pushing for 10 years next. But it's been delayed and delayed and delayed and delayed. And it's such a well-supported bill. All sides of the House, everybody in the general public, apart from a few morons that I've met along the way, think that it should have been done and it should have happened years ago. Finn was promised it 4.5 years ago, and we've been waiting that long. And even yesterday, it looked like we were going to run out of time because there were two very famous filibustering MPs who tried their best to take up the whole parliamentary time talking about something they probably could have spent 5 minutes talking about. But there we go. Politics for you. And it actually ran out of time. It did run out of time. The session is supposed to finish on the dot at 2:30, and it did.
Whoa, what happened there? That's really unusual.
I know. And they came back after the 3-minute recess or whatever it was, and they heard the bill. All they had to do was read the bill and ask if anybody wanted to make any amendments and if anybody had any objections. It took 20 seconds. We've been campaigning for months, for 20 seconds of time. And finally, we got it. So it means now that the Finn's Law Part 2, the increase in sentencing for the Animal Welfare Act, goes up to the Lords. So we're not there yet, and we're going. We've got some great friends in the Lords, and we're going to keep pushing them, and we're going to be polite, and we're going to keep our fingers crossed that we get it through.
Be polite. That's going to be tricky, isn't it? Nowadays.
I know.
No one's polite nowadays, are they? Are anyone polite anymore?
You know what? When you write to an MP or a Lord or a minister and you say thank you, they nearly fall off their chair. They in a copper, isn't it? Very rarely at a big job does anyone sort of tap you on the shoulder and say thank you. But when they do, you remember it forever, and that's why we've tried to keep all our campaigning polite.
I always found the jobs you bent over backwards for, you know, you did your utmost for, you'd get absolutely nothing for. And the ones really you were just doing your job, you get a lovely letter saying, thank you so much, you made us feel so much easier, you know, more relieved and things like this. And I was speaking to someone who was part of the Federation. Oh my God, the extra time he put in to get the evidence for this officer who needed defending on something that is, you know, was completely, we believed was a fictitious complaint, but it was ending up in this, it was getting bigger and bigger. And believe me, you wouldn't put time into someone who just shouldn't be there, quite frankly. And, you know, and he would do the barrister, he was like the barrister's sidekick. He was doing the barristers, whatever they're called, the clerk or something. He was doing enormous amounts of work and reporting back to the barrister, wouldn't even get a thank you sometimes, you know, because they just assumed it just happened.
That's it, yeah. And you know what it's like at work. You open your emails at work and it's moan. Yeah. Now and then it's nice to get actually, you did a pretty good job there. Well done. I'm very lucky. My bosses, they're brilliant, and they will send out well dones and thank yous and highlight some good work. But it's just that one little thing. I talk about this in dog training all the time. We're, as humans, we're brilliant at saying, don't do that. You're rubbish at that. Stop doing that. With our kids, with friends, with our dogs, with our pets, we're great at saying no, and quite often we forget to say, flip it out, that was good. Dog training, I deal with a lot of reactive dogs, and the first thing I say to the owners is, we want you to go away this week and I want you to work out how much of your dog's life they spend reacting, and when they come back they're like, it might have been about 5 minutes last week, and you get them to change how they see things. So what you're saying is for 6 days, 23 hours and 55 minutes, your dog was perfect. Just remember to tell your dog that they were perfect.
Yeah, no, that's right. Do you ever find with your, we're going to move on straight away because I want to get Ian on. Do you ever find you speak to your children like, good girl?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's another discussion for another day. But yes,
okay, we'll do that. We'll do that. Okay. Well, first of all, I've got to thank Sophia Can. Basically, Sophia Can and Alex Can from Can Communications, our marketing and communications consultancy, and they've really helped me just get hold of amazing people like Ian, fascinating people who are able to talk about not only their careers, which are really interesting, especially with Ian, because he's sort of involved in the policing and acting and he's and that side of things, but also with the OCD subject that's coming up, which is, generally is a fascinating thing. So basically, he's an actor, writer, director, and speaker. He's worked in theatre, film, and TV. And before all this, I need to ask him about being a stand-up comedian at one point. He's acted in Tin Star, Hatton Garden, The Bill, Coronation Street, EastEnders, Holby City, Vera, Beowulf, Midsummer Murders, Waterloo Road, Desperate Romantics, a bit like you and me, Dave, I'd say. Yeah. Life on Mars, Waking the Dead, Foyle's War, I'm Still Anne in Partridge. There's a list of 70. I won't, read them all out. He's best known for his roles as a villain, hard man, or serial killer, and of course Owen Armstrong in Coronation Street. So without further ado, it's got to be Ian Puleston Davies. Welcome. How are you? Thank you for joining us.
Hello, Harry. Hi, Dave. Nice to meet you.
Dave, meet Ian. Ian, meet Dave.
Hello, Dave. And likewise, it's a huge privilege and honor to be sitting and chatting with two illustrious authors like you. So fantastic. And
it's a generous word, illustrious.
But yeah, spell it. Both, congratulations. They're both doing really well, aren't they?
Thank you.
They are. They are doing
Thank you. Really well.
Dave's is better. Dave's is definitely better than mine. He could afford his to put his in hardback, you see. And mine luckily only sold well because there was a toilet roll shortage. And I think my pages are more absorbent. That's all.
No, they're great. Honestly, I can't wait to read them both. And I've read up about them, Dave and Harry, and they both look like fantastic reads. Very different in their ways. But no, congratulations to you both. And I have read up that they're both doing really well. So, well done for you. Anyway, back to me. I was getting bored then. I thought a yawn.
Thank you, Ian. Dave, are you thinking what I'm thinking? I'm thinking he's a bloody good actor, and we're going to show bits here. And in the end, he's going to go, "What the hell are these books anyway?" For
that very performance. Well done, Ian. Oscar.
Yeah. Right. But because time, this hour is going to fly by. I know it is. And Ian, you started off, you were born and brought up in Wales on a Welsh farm, weren't you? And you were expected to, maybe not expected, maybe, I don't know, maybe your role was to carry on in the family trait. How did you sort of diversify, so to speak?
Well, I'm gonna do my best, guys, to look at the camera lens rather than you, because it looks like I've fallen asleep, and I haven't. This is the most scintillating conversation I've had this morning. So I'm going to train myself to look at the camera.
Go on, I should do that too.
You were right the first time, Harry. I was expected to follow my father and my grandfather, indeed my great-grandfather, into the farming business. But I just was not meant to be that farmer. So I left my Wellingtons at the back door and I ran off to London in true Dick Whittington style to follow and pursue my dream, which was acting.
And so how did you go in blind and start walking around knocking on doors, or did you have sort of an introduction? Because you started in a miming type thing at Covent Garden, didn't you? Something like that.
Well, that was a little later. No, it wasn't. I wish it was as romantic as turning up and knocking doors and sleeping on friends' sofas and park benches, which you occasionally hear that actors have done. Yeah. Mine was quite tried and tested. I joined my local youth theatre, having discovered the thrill of acting at my school. I had a drama teacher who I owe everything, my career to, Chris Nichols. If you're listening out there in the ether. He encouraged me to enjoy acting and maybe pursue it. on an amateur level, as a teenage level. And so I joined my local youth theatre, and it followed that I was allowed to audition at drama school. I auditioned at the Guildhall School of Music and Drama. I was very fortunate to be one of 33 members to students to get a place. I mean, they always quote that thousands apply and for like 30 odd places. I hope that's true. It helps my story. And I did a 3-year acting course. And then while I was a struggling actor, that was when the mime came in at Covent Garden. Because while my contemporaries, my mates were serving bars and serving restaurant tables and pulling pints, partly because of my OCD, which I know we'll talk about later, and partly because I'd never pulled a pint or served a table in my life. I needed to find an income because, as a struggling actor, you struggle financially as well. So I found that I could occasionally make people laugh by doing daft things. So I took that idea to Covent Garden, and I became. Pardon, Dave?
What was your act?
Well, it was kind of physical knockabout comedy. I used to call myself the noisy mime. So it was kind of mime orientated, but very much knockabout physical comedy. And the reason it went down so well, Dave, is because there was no language barrier. And of course, 50, if not 60 or 70% of the passing trade were international visitors, tourists. So my act went down reasonably well. So I did that for a number of years, and then the alternative comedy circuit kicked off. And I basically took my act indoors alongside the likes of Eddie Izzard and other. Yeah, that's how Eddie Izzard started. He was a street entertainer. So a lot of us just went indoors and started doing the alternative cabaret circuit. And so many, Keith Allen, Rick Mail, Aid Edmondson.
Now I know where they got all their skills from.
Yes, Dawn French, Jennifer
all from you.
You owe me, all of you. We did the alternative cabaret circuit, which we all now know. In the beginning, it was very much, it was like the early punk. No one knew what alternative comedy was. And of course, Arthur Smith.
You were there at the start of all this.
I was there just after the start. The start was about 77, 78. Right. And the original team, literally bear with me because this is interesting. Aid Edmondson, Rick Planer, Tony Allen.
Unbelievable.
Rick Mail, I've said. Oh, yes, of course. Alexi Sale.
Yeah.
And they did this wonderful. They used to do a cabaret gig on a Monday night in the Raymond Review Bar, the strip joint in Soho, and it was like unheard of. It was so underground. It really was a beginning of a new movement, if you like. And people like myself and Arthur Smith, who was your recent brilliant guest, we kind of came on the back of that. I don't know when Arthur was exactly, and I know that Arthur, he would definitely have mentioned Fiasco Job.
Right.
Which was his comedy double act he did with, was it Phil Nice? I hope I'm getting my facts right. Well, I once did a gig with Arthur and his partner at a wonderful vegetarian restaurant called the Earth Exchange in Archway in London. And it literally was a small restaurant where at the end of the evening, the guy called Kim, a lovely guy, pushed the tables to the back or pushed them to make enough room for a small stage. And we comedians, which included Paul Merton.
No.
Right. So I promise you, Dave, I have a collection of photographs of an evening which had Arthur Smith, Paul Martin, and myself and my then partner, Rob Edmonds. We did a double act called The Great Smell of Brutes.
Yeah.
And we used to play the audience in Brutes Fabergé and do this act about two guys on the pull in nightclubs.
Oh, so we're going back there. I can take it back there.
Early 80s. So that's how I started. And that was kind of parallel to my acting. And then as my acting gathered momentum, I was able to do less stand-up comedy. But in the early years, guys, the stand-up comedy was as important as my theatre.
Right. How does comedy get you into serious acting?
Well, there's no join, Dave. There's no join. It doesn't, in a way. And do you know what? That's really interesting. No one's ever given me an opportunity to say this, but I kind of regret that there wasn't more of a fusion between the two, because, as you rightly said, I kind of cornered the market in psychopaths and all around bad guys. And although I've enjoyed playing them, because the bad guy, old cliche, but the bad guy is always more fun than the good guy. Yeah. But I do regret not doing comedy, because you kind of do get typecast. But if it pays the checks or either pays the bills, then you follow that route. But it's something at the grand old age of 31, double that, take away 5. It's something I would like to pursue. I'd like to do more comedy.
Well, before we go on, just Scotty Bateman, thank you very much. He's a jumbo jet pilot, still flying the biggest of jumbo jets around, even through lockdown, luckily. Wow. I think he's still allowed to. I think he's allowed to. I think he doesn't just take a plane away. But, I'm too young to remember any of this. Brute. I think mine was Old Spice. Blue Stratus. Stratus was, But before we go on, look, I've got to play this. So
don't forget high karate, guys.
That's probably too expensive for a Cornish boy like me. I don't think the Cornish maids would have appreciated it. Oh God, that'll get me in trouble. Back then, right. But anyway, let me just play a little selection that I've edited. So you've got a list. So this is what I love. You got the voice of the gangster, the bad guy, the whatever. That's what it is as well. And then we're going to go on a little bit to the bill and whatever. But let's have a listen to this.
Pro-Islamic groups hangs himself.
He had cancer, I wrote his obit. Max, this is just a kid who sees a conspiracy in everything.
He didn't jump, Jimmy.
How do you know? He was paranoid. Maybe he thought they were coming to get him.
Oh, maybe they did.
Yeah, this coming from the guy who thinks Pearl Harbor...
They say my chief constable looks like this guy. The next one will come. Sorry.
You told me you didn't know him. No. You used to take him to the airport every time he went to Nigeria.
Did I?
What type of car did you drive?
He's so creepy. You look so creepy.
I don't remember.
What color was it?
Sorry.
Shivers down my spine, I tell you. You just want to...
No tax, no insurance, no private hire license?
Well, I was an old banger. I was broke. Stony broke.
What kind of old banger? Was it a,
Sorry about the freezing.
A box sword?
I used to have fluffy dice, if that helps.
And then
Is there?
Yes.
I thought you were going to go down in history. Was I wrong to be obsessed with you?
No. You were right to be obsessed.
Was I?
You are horrible.
He is horrible, isn't he?
See, I understand you.
I think that's it's sorry about the little bit of freezing and all that. We'll never have super duper Wi-Fi and whatever, but it just it does put shivers down your spine, doesn't it?
Absolute sinister. I mean, you say you get typecast, but all three of those characters are completely different. So it's not like you're just playing the same character and regurgitating. They're all completely different. And I've got goosebumps.
I'll take that.
There's another one. There's another one I couldn't play, but Ian is in a bar. He's behind a bar, and this other gangster comes in, and it's that very quiet, controlled, sort of threatening tones. And I'd love to play it because it's the scariest sort of F off I've ever heard by Ian. Is just full of meaning like that. And then the next thing he's jumping over the thing and shoving a gun in his head. And then the C-bomb is dropped. And then there's another effing this and I'd have been but it's just phenomenal. So you get sucked into it. Is that absolutely incredible?
That was Tim Roth and that was Tin Star. And of course, I was pinching myself the whole time because we were all big fans of Reservoir Dogs.
I mean, Tim Roth,
so what, Dave?
Tim Roth, an incredible actor.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had to really raise my game to work with him. You know, it was a lesson of. I'll tell you what it's a lesson of, Dave. It was a lesson, and Tim is genius at this. Of less is more, and I really learned from Tim on set that he hardly does anything, and yet it comes across so powerful on the screen. And it made me realize that you have to be so still to get the message across sometimes. It's not all about gesticulate. Say what, Dave?
To make nothing pay off, you've got to be bloody good, haven't you?
And he's one of the best at that.
I've done my best at nothing, but never made it pay off, unfortunately.
You got plenty out.
Yeah, I know it's true. But that then didn't that get you quite well known in America then and Canada? Because
to be honest, it kind of didn't do me any harm. I most of the work I'd done previously, apart from a thing I co-wrote called Dirty Filthy Love, which did very well in the States. But as an actor, very little. Thank you, Dave. Very little got through until Tin Star. And what's fascinating, when I spent a year in Canada, we filmed in the Rockies. We stayed in Calgary, and it was just extraordinary, as you can imagine. And what was wonderful when I went to LA soon after was being recognized on the, it's one thing being recognized, you know, in my local pub in Chester, but it's an altogether most magical moment when you get recognized across the water. So that was a huge, my turn to have goosebumps.
Yeah. I mean, there's a nice comment there by Debbie there. I'm loving the fact that I'm a massive Corrie fan, and can see Owen Armstrong.
Hello, Debbie. He's still around somewhere, Debbie. I think he's in Aberdeen now. Convalescing in Aberdeen, I believe. It's true. That's what my character, he disappeared to Owen Armstrong and Corrie. He left Anna, the love of his life, and went to a job in Aberdeen, never to return.
Now that reminds me, because there's another character.
Yeah.
There's another character who came and then went and came again, and you've got a story about it. And I'm going to just show this a little bit. Hopefully it will smooth stream this time, but see if my Wi-Fi can cope with it. All right, let's see.
This is a warrant to search your property for stolen goods. I'm saying nothing.
This is the
You're
bill,
saying
everyone.
nothing. Shut up.
It's clean. Get up.
Do you ever make a tit of yourself, huh?
Try the kitchen.
Oh, you cocked up, mate. Hey, I'll get an apology for this, will I? Hey, look at me when I'm talking to you. I'm going to get an apology for this, am I?
I'd back off if I were you. No surprise. Nothing here.
What did I tell you? I said you got the wrong man, but you wouldn't listen to me, would you? Eh? Now you just come into my home for no reason. You haven't even told me what you're looking for.
Calm down.
Come on, get out of here. You've got no reason whatsoever to come in here and get out of here. Right. For assaulting a police officer. You don't have to say anything, but it may have go.
Satisfied? We didn't find anything. I'm doing it for assault.
What?
Right, the interview stage.
You can't remember where you were 2.5 hours ago.
Well, I could have been home.
You couldn't have been because you were seen returning to your flat at 2:30.
Do you always have a problem with your memory, or is it just in the presence of police officers?
No, I don't have to help you. You're in my place apart, and what did you find, eh? Nothing.
Having established where you were at 2:30, let's establish where you were before that.
Well, go on then.
You get a great sense of humour, Mick. Do you know that?
Look, you're supposed to be trying to do me for assault. What's all this talk at 2:15, 2:30? What's that got to do with anything?
Because at 2:15 this afternoon, there were 2 elderly ladies who were attacked in their own home. They were beaten, they were punched, they were kicked, they were thrown to the ground, they were doused in petrol, and then they were threatened that it was going to be set alight.
Oh, this
Serves him right.
Do you know what? It stopped on that. He said, "Serves them right. Serves them right. They shouldn't have." He said they shouldn't have been so old.
Oh my God! You do have a problem with your memory, though.
What?
You do have a problem with your memory. You couldn't remember anything in the first interview that Harry showed either. All you remember was Fluffy Night.
I haven't seen that since it was on 20 odd years ago. Can I ask you, and this is a burning question that I'm sure so many viewers and listeners to this would like to know. What was your take initially on the bill as far as the comparison between it and real life?
I loved it. It was an iconic show, and lots of old Bill used to watch the Bill.
Really?
But you did come away. Most of us would sit there and go, "Couldn't do that. Can't do that. Can't do that. Couldn't do that." What we do makes boring telly. So it would be lovely if you could solve a crime in an hour and everyone could go down the pub and have a beer. But it doesn't happen like that.
Here's the thing. Here's the thing, though, because what I thought is, so we see your character being thrown against the wall, and then the police officer making up this assault thing, right? Whether it went through. Now, of course, if you see that on a video out there, it's like he should lose his job. Isn't it interesting when you're watching a drama? You sort of have an empathy with that person. You go, oh, he's just had a bad day. He'll come round. And he's
a bloody villain as well.
Yeah. And you think, yeah, go on, get him. And then the next thing, if it happened in real life, so it's a really interesting separation. The other thing is there's not a lot of. Shortly after that, I found obviously I wasn't. I don't think. Yeah, I would have been with the Bill. It was lovely the way people could get to know the characters, and then suddenly realise actually these are normal people. That's what it was so good with for us.
That's fascinating. Can I also very quickly? Can I ask you, Dave and Harry, of all of them? I presume you do dip into them. What do you think? Which do you think has been the most accurate of all the ones we've seen in the last 50 years? Say.
What dramas per se?
Yeah, police dramas.
Oh, blimey!
Do you have a favourite?
There's some great TV out there, like Line of Duty, absolutely fantastic. But there's stuff in there that I really hope doesn't happen. You know, some proper serious. We know there's corruption everywhere, but there's some proper serious, nasty corruption going on in there. And I would hate to think that I've ever worked with someone like that. But it's brilliant TV.
I genuinely don't think
you're skating around it though. I think if you want, go on, Harry.
If you want that, you need to go to a documentaries, fly on the wall documentaries, I think, because you can't. I was speaking to a screenwriter was phoned me up for a bit of detail on policing. And she was like, "All right, first of all, I'm really sorry, but this is a drama, okay? This is and she was apologizing for that. This is drama." I said, "It's okay. I watched Vera last week, and she doesn't use police and criminal act for anyone. If she dragged someone into the interview room, cautioned them, guess what they'd say? No comment. No comment. She's interviewing them in their lounge, getting full-on confessions." Yes. I said, "It's just, but we accept that. We don't. It would be tedious." If it wasn't,
I want for policing to be driving around in an old burgundy Jaguar and spending several weeks on one case, but it's not like that. But it doesn't mean it is not fantastic TV. So yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is never would the chief superintendent come out and go and start interviewing people. The forensics pathologists certainly wouldn't be doing it either, and they got a job to do in the mortuary. They come out interviewing everyone. So but it doesn't. I totally enjoy it. The one I struggled with a little bit was the VIP one. What was that? The
RP.
There was the VIP protection one. What was that? Oh, the one, because this is where my brain goes.
Last year, 2 years ago.
Yeah. I got into it, but I had to get past a little bit, and then it was only because other people said it was brilliant. I carried on, and it was fine. But you have to switch off to think. The rule is you never, ever leave your principal if you are the principal protection officer, and. Of course, what do you do? Leave her in a car and run up a building and go and delegate that bit. You never. But people don't know that, so they don't miss it. It's too difficult.
I suppose poetic license is stretched to its limits, isn't it? With these, these cop dramas, and I suppose that is the niggle with all of them. I do think there was a series which you may or may not have seen years ago called Cops. And it was filmed very fly on the wall. The style was very fly on the wall, and I urge you both to have a look at that, because I thought that was pretty damn close to what I imagine you guys would think is a drama quite close to reality without dipping into the poetic
There have been
license.
some funny ones that I think, oh my god, that's hilarious. And I can think of what was the one that Rowan Atkinson did, where he was where he was the uniform, and then there was the detective.
Thin blue line. Yes.
Well, yeah.
I thought that was it. Yeah.
Thin blue line. That was funny. But do watch Cops. I'd love to find out what you think of Cops. That was pretty damn.
The only thing is, Ian, what we tend to do is put in half an hour overtime, because if we watch something like that, it is like a training package. It's not. We're like, I suppose what it is, I don't get the same. I would the bill and things is nostalgic, and I'd really enjoy that again. Do you know what I mean? I think I don't enjoy that sort of thing, even though I know it's brilliant for other people, because it's work, and it doesn't do anything for me on that. So I won't tend to go and watch a drama like that so much now, I must admit, unless it's something like Vera. I've slowly got into, but again, it's only because my wife does. She watches it.
She supports Finn's Law Part 2, so I love her to bits. And she's very pro-police.
Oh, does she? Oh, well, it's my best one then.
What
most
did you say there? What did you say there?
Brenda, she supports Finn's Law Part 2 and Finn's Law. And she's very pro-police.
Brilliant.
I've never met her, but she's...
well, I can tell you she's delightful. She's brilliant. She's everything you imagine her to be and more.
Oh, brilliant. Tell us about the bill. You've got a story about the bill, because there was 2 episodes you did, wasn't there?
Yes, there's a burglar in your house, Dave, behind you. Don't someone robbing the electrics.
Yeah.
I didn't have to let you down slowly.
I think she's searching for one of the children, because Dave's got so many children and dogs in their house. They put the children in the kennels and the dogs in the beds.
Hello.
That's one of what? One of how many? 3, 4?
12.
3 girls. 3 girls.
God help you.
There's another one going.
And how many dogs do you have, Dave?
6.
Oh, that's a sore question now, Ian. You had to bring that up.
Until a few days ago.
Bless him. I made him feel bad now. No, we've discussed it. That's fine. Rory, bless him. I was very fortunate to go and meet them, and Rory was his massive mastiff. He was the elderly statesman of the house, wasn't he?
Oh, bless him.
Yeah.
He had a great character about him. What I loved about him probably the most was that he wasn't shy. So he would lay on the sofa on his back with everything on show and not a care in the world. And I think we should all take a little bit of that away with us.
Yeah. But I always get intimidated by dogs with bigger ones than me, though. So anyway, we'll move on. That's why I got a border terrier.
That's why we got a bitch called Daisy.
Yeah, and I got a border terrier. But anyway.
No threat, no competition.
No.
Didn't feel emasculated.
I tell you what, Hot Fuzz was quite close to us, actually. That's by Claire Thomas. Hot Fuzz is quite realistic, because I have had that chase over the fences. I have had swans in the back of my car, literally. I mean, you couldn't make it up. Honestly, it's just brilliant. But anyway, I'm going to drag it out of you. You've got a story about the bill.
Yes, I'm going to make it very short. I have to tell you, and it's interesting that you chose, I'll say, the Cockney clip, because very, very quickly, when I got the part, I think it was a 3-part storyline, and I had, being, I'm a Welsh Scouser, where we come from, where we have this huge identity crisis. We don't really know what we are. We're still near Liverpool, so we have a very odd hybrid northern Welsh tonal, Scouse tonal accent. Try putting a Cockney in there, and you've got a recipe for Dick Van Dyke disaster. I was cringing looking at that clip, because I did what I think was...
It was all right. I didn't notice. I'm not Cockney. How about you, Dave? You're Cockney, almost.
My mum was Cockney. I'm South East London. Yeah, it was pretty good.
I was a bit nervous when you showed that clip, actually, Harry. It wasn't bad. I think it's matured with time. But at the time, I was horrified when I saw it back and heard the odd tones. Anyway, in the storyline, my character gets sent down, and I thought, that's it. You know, I've done my 3 stories. Thank you very much. Checks in the bank. A year later, the producer rang my agent and said, look, we'd like to not rediscover, revisit Ian's storyline. He's in prison. He's out and he's angry and he wants revenge. And that was what was pitched to me. And I swore I would never again make people's ears bleed. So I said, look, and I was out of work, so I needed the job. And I said, look, tell them I'll only do it if he comes out a Scouser. And that's what we did.
They did
that villain was sent down as a Cockney and came out 12 months later as a Scouser. And do you know what broke my heart? No one wrote in to complain.
You would have to. Now, there's a link, because you would have to. You could say you'd have to be OCD to know that there was what you were before and that. How can you introduce something like that? Go, yeah, I know, because and this was, I was just saying, you're a sufferer of obsessive compulsive disorder, and some believe it's about being neat and tidy. And I just said this earlier that I took off your website thing, but or not your website, I've taken your CV or whatever. It says, but it's a seriously debilitating disorder which leads to the sufferer to have unwanted intrusive thoughts, rendering day-to-day life a living nightmare. So how did that come about with you?
And there was no hyperbole in what you said then. Every tragic symptom or description of the illness is completely true. It is that debilitating. It can destroy people's lives, and I am one of many now who is more than happy to shout that description of the illness from the rooftops. It's known as a secretive disorder, and it literally, that's what it's known as within the professionals. And it makes perfect sense, because one, not so much now, which is great, but back in the day when pre my diagnosis, I didn't know what it was, like so many other sufferers. And I actually, Harry, got it down to 3 things. I thought it was either an aneurysm or a blood clot. I think they're the same thing, aren't they? Or early dementia, or I was just going crazy. I literally thought it was one of those 3 things. I had no idea.
When did it start for you then? Or when do you think it started for you?
Well,
you were a late bloomer, weren't you?
No, I wasn't. That was when I got diagnosed, when I had those 3 things in my mind.
You were about 35, yeah.
I was 35. Thank you, Harry. That was when I first got
4 years
diagnosed,
ago.
Dave. But my earliest memory of OCD was as a little boy of 7. So I've had it since I was 7 years of age. And even then, I was aware that something wasn't quite right and that I was very different from other kids of my age. And as I got older, so it got more, so it got worse. And by the time I was 35, it was, I could barely, I couldn't get out of bed some days.
So what were the symptoms to you? What were the symptoms at 7 and what were the symptoms at 35?
Mine were unwanted thoughts, as you rightly described it earlier on. They're called ruminations. They're thoughts that swim around your head and you can't trap them and you can't get rid of them. I kind of use a very weak metaphor or analogy, I don't know the difference, years ago, and I'm still using it. I should refresh it. But imagine a whale opening its mouth and all that krill going in. Now what happens is all that water goes in and it's left with the krill, and that's what it eats. Now, a person with OCD has this, I believe, this large, extra large antennae on their head. And all this information is coming through. Now, whereas normal people will let it all go through and only cling on to the thoughts that are necessary, a person with OCD has to cling on to all the thoughts. And it gets kind of very jam-packed in there. It becomes like mental indigestion, and you find yourself having to digest and analyze each and every thought. And I used to call them my chewing gum thoughts. You can't let go of the thought until you've been forensic about them. And that's how I describe my OCD. There are hundreds of thousands of different OCDs, but that's the best way of describing my problem, is that I have all these thoughts, all this information, and I can't let most of them go. I have to store them up and go through each and every one, and I can't be happy until I've been forensic about describing the stain on the floor, the noise outside the room, all encompassing, and it's exhausting.
There was someone recently, wasn't there, who, I can't remember who it was. I want to say it was a footballer, but I'm not sure it was, who came out and discussed their OCD, and they'd never gone to get diagnosis because, like Harry said, he'd always thought that he knew there was something different about him, but he didn't think for 1 second it was OCD because he'd always been told that it's the people that turn the light switch on and off 50 times, or the people that have to be, everything has to be in its place on the coffee table or in the bedroom.
Washing your hands.
And then he had these intrusive thoughts, and he had thoughts that, if he didn't do this in this sequence, then something really nasty would happen to someone else. And he got himself into this vicious cycle where, and like you say, it was secretive. No one could see him doing it, but every day he was having to do these things over and over and over, hundreds of times, to prevent a loved one coming to some ill. It was just that they were his intrusive thoughts, and there must be so many different ways it manifests itself. It's
you're absolutely right. Thank you for explaining it so well, Dave, better than me actually. But I have to say that what's wonderful is that people are talking about it now. OCD is very common in our language, and as late as the mid-90s, when I got diagnosed at 35, I remember my GP looking it up. He didn't know what it was. So we were even as recent as the mid-90s. It was very much the dark ages. But then, of course, all these instruments were able to dissect the brain and examine it and photograph it and film it. And more information came out. So now we know pretty much, parents know about it so they can keep an eye on their children. Teachers know about it. So it's great that it's out there and we're talking about it now. So thank you for that.
But do you think it's still a bit of a jokey stereotype about it? Because there's an incident when you're on the Coronation Street set where you had to jump into the van, wasn't there? And you were worried, so it's not just overload information, which could be like, similar thing I can think of with autism is where there's just overload and it's busy and whatever, but it also can be onto the fact that you were worried about jumping onto the seat in the van or something. Was that the case?
No, I mean, forgive me, I didn't, again, this is why I'll be crossing myself. I'll probably be obsessing about it for the rest of the day. I have to clarify that that's one aspect of my OCD, the information. And what I'm saying is, and the reason I use that as an example is that there may be someone out there listening to this very podcast and going, oh my God, I thought it was about, as Dave was saying, the washing the hands and switching on the light. It is not. And I explain my quite rare and unusual side of my OCD, but it is absolutely all encompassing. Yes, germs, mine, contamination, fear of harm to myself and to people around me. The biggest one, the most difficult one for me is that whenever I sit down, I'm always convinced I'm going to break my coccyx. So I have to go through this whole ritual of sitting down really careful. And I'm very, as I said, I'm an expert at disguise now. And we are all experts at disguise because we're covering up what we're doing I remember I described this in an interview many times, that if I'm in a restaurant, I can't just sit down straight away because my OCD will tell me if I sit down straight away, I will crack my coccyx. So I've got this whole elaborate, I'm pushing the laptop back, this whole elaborate performance of disguising myself. It's like a smoke screen. And what I'm doing, you can't really see it, but rather than sitting down, I'm going, oh, do you want to sit here or should we sit over there? Can I have the menu, please? And there's a brooch you're wearing. And what I'm doing, this is the
distraction.
Exactly the distraction. What I'm actually doing is going slowly down out the back of my thighs and touching this chin, and eventually it's like a moon landing appropriately. And my brain is telling me you've got to be very slow before you hit the sofa or the chair or whatever, otherwise you break your coccyx. But all this is going on at the same time. But yeah, you know, the Coronation Street team were brilliant at protecting me. And the Rover's return was a nightmare because I can't just take a sip from a glass because my OCD will tell me it's stained, it's chipped. So in rehearsal, and this is what's wonderful about people who haven't spoken out about it, because you think you're a leper, you really do. You think you're unclean, you're dirty. It's embarrassing, it's humiliating. It's none of those things, and people are so damn understanding. And when I came out on national television in front of Philip and Fern, it was the best decision I ever made. You're not a social leper, and people are so helpful. And in the Rover's return, we'd have a rehearsal virtually just for me. Not really, I'm indulging. But, you know, the people behind the bar would say, look, Ian, have a look at the glass, and the props people, it's not, you know, and examine it, and I'd have a sip, and then we'd go for rehearsal. So all those rituals are exhausting, but they're even more exhausting if you're doing it alone.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna come out here. I don't know whether it's OCD, but I have all those rituals. I have not your rituals, I have my own. I've never admitted this to anybody. My wife doesn't even know. And I have so many different, and it is exhausting because you spend all day doing them. You spend all day going through all these things to prevent things happening, and your mind knows that those things are never going to happen, but you can't stop yourself from doing them, because if they did happen, you'd never forgive yourself. You know, even we lost our dog this week. And I was doing them all the way to the end, hoping that for some reason I might be able to stop him from dying. And it's just, and it is all confusing, and no one knows it's happening. It's going on in the background 24/7, and
it's something that I remember as a small child. I remember as a small child, Dave, thinking exactly like you, and then I sort of, for me, and I don't know, I presumed everyone had that. You know, where you, I'd sort of shut the door and then I'd touch it with my hand before I'd go a second time, and I would do that. And for me, it was enough. And I suggest it wasn't. It was very, very mild or whatever, because I could say no, I'm not going to do it this time, and I don't care. Nothing's going to happen. So I went. But there is obviously, it's scary, isn't it? Because there, for the grace of God, that I then didn't go down where I didn't have something far worse that went, no, mate, you're coming on my journey, not yours. You know,
exactly, Harry, exactly.
So what for you then, Ian and Dave? That's incredible, mate. But I bet there's loads of people out there, because I know the feelings you've had as well. And when I was listening to Ian, I was thinking, not nearly like that, but I get it. I'm not, in my mind, I'm not saying, well, this is ridiculous. I mean, you know, how could that have an effect on something? You know, I'm generally not, because you know that sort of, you know, that double tap instead of, I touched it 3 times, I've got to equalize it. You know, I get that, but luckily I don't do it now. I don't have to do it now, and thank goodness. It's just, you know, it is luck rather than judgment. So say I meet you, right? Because there's social etiquette. We're shaking. We used to. I don't know what we're going to do now. But it's really important. People who know each other, there's no offense taken. So the people, as we meet you and whatever, is not to go and touch you and shake your hand, basically, is it? It's like, hi, Ian, you know, sit down. And how do you go about it?
I don't know. I would hate to think that I have to police appropriately. Police my behavior, and more importantly, other people's behavior. I think people who know me know not to do certain things, but I would not, in a way that's, it's giving in. It's a huge debate, actually. It's another hour's discussion about how you deal with it and how you deal with it within the community. What I will say, and I'm slightly moving away from that question, is that you look around you now, look at what we're in. You know, if mental health ever had a field day, we're living it now. And I would imagine, I wouldn't imagine, I know for a fact that those levels of anxiety, because it's all anxiety led, OCD alongside all the other mental illnesses is all basically the umbrella term for anxiety. And because our anxiety amongst everyone has shot up and is way off the scale, you know, it is a pandemic. Mental health is a pandemic. So OCD is having the best time of its life. It is, you know, it is very worrying. So I would say to people, and I do, you know, we have to be aware of people around us because it's a secretive disorder and people are ashamed. You know, we just have to keep an eye on each and every one of us, and not just ask once, but ask twice, are you okay? Because, you know, Dave's a perfect example today, you know. Who knows, you know, no one would, I'm sure Harry wouldn't, your family wouldn't, but you've just admitted it is exhausting. And isn't that a shame? And I can't tell you how, once you confess first to yourself and then to your loved ones and then maybe to a professional, you wouldn't believe how much easier it is. Sorry, I don't mean this to be a, you know,
no,
Ian, it's exactly what we want it to be.
Right.
All right, because the whole point of these sorts of things is sometimes Dave and I just chat to each other and there's no guest, and sometimes there's a guest, and it is fun and laughter, Mickey taking, but we hope to learn something from our guests as well, really. And it's just, and these sorts of things does affect a lot of people.
I tell you, mental health in the workplace, guys, it is, you know, it's there.
Ian, when you got, I mean, what made you go and get diagnosed, and then what help did you get after that? Do they help you manage your OCD? Do they help you to accept it? What is it? I mean, are you trying to get rid of it, or are you just trying to live with it? How does it work?
I don't know. I think the jury's out whether you ever get rid of it, Dave. I think it's managing it and living with it day to day. There are wonderful tools out there now that there never was when I was a child or a teenager. And of course, medication. There wasn't such a thing. There was, but it was quite archaic. I think I got diagnosed, Dave, because I couldn't live a day longer. And I swear, at its worst, I co-wrote a film called Dirty Filthy Love, and it opens with the character loosely based on me, played by the extraordinary actor Michael Sheen, with him lying prostrate on his bed, unable to get up. That was me. It would take me hours.
It was a BAFTA nomination, that one, wasn't it?
Yeah. It would take me hours to get out of bed, because the first thing I would do when I woke up is take 20 minutes lifting my head off the pillow, because I felt, I kid you not, that if I lifted my head off the pillow too quickly, I'd break my neck. And so it went until I stood up. And even when I stood up, I was fearful that I'd crack my ankles if I stood up too quickly. And then I'd fear that if I stood up too quickly, there'd be too much weight on the carpet, and I'd wear the carpet out and the bricks and the foundations underneath.
Not funny you say that, but mine is sometimes at the start of the day, that if I don't get up right and do the correct sequence, then the whole day is ruined. Not for me, but for everybody. So people will be, you know, before this and that will be rubbish, and work will be rubbish. And sometimes you do think, well, actually, it's just easier to stay in bed.
And I was bedbound, and that's when I went to my therapist, and I was seeing her for depression, and I said, I gave the list of 3, and she said, I actually don't know what it is, blah blah blah, but she found someone that did, and I got diagnosed at a very expensive £135 diagnosis. I remember I went to see someone in Harley Street, and within 5 minutes he said, okay, you've not got an aneurysm, you're not suffering dementia, neither are you going crazy. You have a condition called OCD. And as he said that, I remember he pushed a packet of tissues over to me, and I thought, I wonder why he's done that. And of course he knew that any second there was going to be, you know, an eruption of emotion, and the floodgates opened, and I sobbed for a good 10 minutes because I realized that I wasn't one of those 3, and that there was an end to it. But it was 35. I'd had it since I was 7. What's great about today is that you can get diagnosis a lot earlier. Thank God.
So I'm going to ask you a ridiculous question, because if you'd asked me, that I think you'd know the answer. Are you doing your OCD now? Because I know I am. I'm always doing.
What are you doing at the moment now, Dave? What's happened in the last half hour?
There was all sorts of stuff. So when I came out to you, obviously my anxiety went up. So I've got the end of this thing on my jumper, and I'm doing things to it, and I have to do it a certain amount of times, otherwise, I don't know, the interview won't go well, or whatever it might be, that sort of comes into your mind and then won't leave you alone, and you have to deal with it by doing whatever it is. And I have silly little eye twitches, and if I don't do it in a certain order, in a certain way, in a certain amount of times, all sorts of evils might befall to people. So it's happening all the time. I mean, are you doing? Is your OCD there now? I mean,
yeah. Oh gosh, it's kind of they called it once upon a time white noise. That white noise is always that's kind of mental static noise.
Two things at once, aren't you?
Yeah.
You're trying to have a normal life and deal with your OCD at the same time.
And it's I always remember thinking that, you know, the day I never have another OCD, I'd be able to play Hamlet in a week. Because I'm so distracted by, you know, it's like you're not firing on all cylinders because a few of the cylinders are dealing with the noise. What I try and do and what they teach you and train you to do through CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, is learn to turn that noise down, learn to cope with it. There are wonderful mechanisms, or not mechanisms, what am I thinking? Ways of dealing with it. Yes, I've got one now. I had one at the beginning of the thing. If you play it back, you'll see that I was doing this because I was convinced there was a little lump in there. I get obsessed with health anxiety as well, so I was fiddling around with that. I put my glasses on earlier on, and my OCD said that I'd poke my eye. There was maybe I could write down. Maybe we could have a competition.
Yeah, we can.
I've got about 6 or 7 currently, but I'm better because they're on number 3 or 4. I remember when they were on number 11, 24/7.
Yeah.
Have a look at that message by MB7 Star. Twice the suffering. You suffer with the condition, and then you suffer the shame of having the condition. And I think that was part of the tears that were expected from you, is because he realized that it was a massive release of stress to know that, number one, you haven't got a brain hemorrhage or a brain tumor, and so you're not going mad, you haven't got dementia. I'm just waiting for the big bomb, because everything, like Dave with your strap and things like that, and that twitch I used to have as a child, I used to go like this, a little twitch, and I didn't need to do it. And when I was watching you, now these are the most mildest of mildest things. I'm not putting myself anywhere in yours, but so I can understand a massive exaggerated side of that. Whereas I found why am I squinting at the TV, and I get really tired. And I thought, when I started wearing glasses, I thought, oh, this will clear it, this will, and it didn't. It was like, I know I was doing this sort of thing, you know. And then I could then train myself to think, no, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just stop doing that for 5 minutes and see. And I've got myself through it. Comes a little bit now. Now that's not OCD, but I can, or if it is, it's like saying, you know, this is what you could have had, sort of thing. But it's to have an exaggerated form of that. I could see it's almost like being addicted to drugs. It's like having anorexia. It's like you can't just switch it off. You know, you have to go through a long process. You know, I've had somebody. Is it linked to self-harming? Somebody asked further up. Could there be self-harming involved? Do you know? Is that a symptom or not?
I don't know. I would never. I remember I made a mistake at a conference once because I'm a patron of OCD UK, so I'm often talk at the conferences, the annual conferences, and I made a terrible mistake by comparing it to another illness. And it wasn't. It was a dreadful thing to do. It wasn't informed at all. It was my opinion, and you have to be very careful of making stuff up that you think about. And I got bawled out by someone in the audience who actually had the condition, and she was right to bawl me out. So, in answer, I don't have an answer. I don't know whether it's connected.
Do you find that I love dog training. Dog training is my passion, and I must admit, you talked about turning it down. When I'm occupied by doing that, because obviously you're watching the dog, and it's all about their body language, and of course they pick up on your body language, so they know you've got OCD and you're doing all these little things. I find that when I'm doing that, when I'm immersed in dog training, everything gets turned down, and I do pretty well, which is why I spend all my life doing dog training.
Like a distraction.
This is good. This is this is lovely to hear you sharing your stories as well, Dave. It really is. It's great, and there's so many. You know, I'm sure there's a joke in somewhere. You know, about a room of people, and I remember very, very quickly.
Two cops and an actor, or one former cop, one dog handler, a dog handler, a farms officer, and an actor enter a room and talk about OCD. You see, at the moment, I've got your faces in the wrong angle. I need a fourth person in here, for Christ's sake. This is not helping.
Alignment. Yes. Well, it's funny. I went to a rap party once of a comedy, a sitcom in Manchester, and I was talking with a friend of mine, and I was quite bad in my OCD at the time, and he's known. He's a wonderful actor and very successful and very well known, but he has he has terrible Tourette's.
Right.
And we were chatting at this rap party one evening, and I was checking my shoes for dog shit, and doing my twitches and examining myself and checking stains on the beer glass, and he was switching away and all that. we caught each other doing all these picks and I said, you know what? I said, we were single at the time. I said, we haven't got a hope in hell. And I think it was those kind of stories that made me want to eventually write Dirty Filthy Love, because when I wrote it with Jeff Pope, my then writing partner, I made it clear from the outset that I didn't want it to be this all-encompassing, worthy drama about mental illness. I wanted people to laugh at it as well, laugh at it in the right way, not the wrong way.
Yes.
And so I made it makes it more accessible if there is humor in there, very much like what you described your podcast to be, Harry, earlier on. So that's why Dirty Filthy Love has elements of comedy in it, because I wanted it to be accessible and not a patronizing, worthy, seminar on mental illness.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like Maria's just said there, Dave. Basically, training horses is a similar. Similar. It's sort of dumbed down the feelings of it. Now, because we've gone on longer, but it's just really great conversation. I don't want to shut it off right now. When you're learning your lines, there must be an awful lot involved there, surely. And how did you do it? And especially with something like Coronation Street, where you haven't got time to hang around and spend too much time on them. Have you got one of those really annoying brains that just learn lines like that?
I wish. No, I don't. I have the opposite. There were a couple of actors in Corrie. Craig Charles was one. There was someone else, I can't remember, who I don't even know whether it exists, a photographic memory or the equivalent to. And they literally, who was it? It's a Jack Shepherd, a couple of them who could literally just glance at a script and then go on and do it.
So my daughter's like that.
I wish. Yeah. There's two things I wish I could have as an actor: a really good memory and a good ear for accents.
Yeah.
Without having to waste any more time, I'm as bad with learning lines as I was with that Cockney accent.
But what was your method? You get a script and you read it through, or do you imagine yourself? Is it easier to imagine it as a picture, as a film, and then it comes, or do you rely on the other person's script back to you? Or
those are two methods, actually, Harry. They're two very well-used methods. No, mine is so boring and methodical. It's just I learn it like I would the telephone directory. I really just learn it and go over it and over it and over it 1,000 times. I have to. And interestingly enough, I think I have to do it that way, and I have to know it more than any other actor on set because of those distractions that me and Dave have been sharing. Go on.
Just going to make a point about that. I struggle to read a book, not because I struggle to read. I don't, but because my brain, because of all the stuff that's going on, I have to read every single word and see every full stop. Otherwise, my brain will go, no, you've got to go back and read it. And it's so frustrating because there's so many things I want to do. Writing the book for me was incredible, but bloody hell, it was hard work. Because I had to do every single dot on every single place and read every single word and see every single comma. Otherwise, my brain would be like, no, you haven't just read that last paragraph. You've got to go back and do it again because you missed A. It's just...
Do you know what? For all the disadvantages, and I think it's also important to know, and in fact, one of your listeners, viewers, pointed this out very early on in the OCD part of the discussion, and he or she said, I think, that, a lot of bright people, a lot of geniuses, I'm not saying that me and Dave are two of them, but great minds have suffered from OCD. Now, I'm not saying that we are that, but what I'm saying is, and this is a quote from Dirty Filthy Love from Shirley Henderson, when he asks her, are we who we are because of or in spite of? And that's the $64,000 question. What can we get from OCD? Are we, have you written a book? Are you so good with dogs? Is it because you're so forensic? Can it lend itself? Or is it in spite of? I don't have the answer. I certainly will not credit OCD with anything because it's been a bastard to me all my life. But am I who I am? Am I the person that can betray people, that can write scripts? Because of my fascination with people, the way they sneeze, the way they breathe, the way they scratch their ears. Is that because of OCD?
Yeah.
Because I'm forensic?
Yeah.
It's an open goal. But I do believe, and appropriately, when I say open goal, that's led me on to David Beckham. I believe David Beckham is one of our greatest ever free kick takers because of his OCD, because it's commonly known that he used to do an extra 3 or 4 hours practicing those free kicks. Now, you telling me that he did it in spite of...
And he's well known. He's well known that all his cupboards with the labels forwards and things like that. Oh my goodness, how fascinating!
I think because of his OCD that he was that free kick taker. He did it. He knows. He's admitted, not that he lends itself to OCD, but when he told me, when I saw in an interview, when I saw in an interview that he said, "Oh yeah, I used to do an extra 3 hours," and I used to say, "That's your OCD, pal."
Yeah.
Right. Well, Dave,
people out there suffering. You've got to not take credit, give it credit, but say, look, it's awful, but what have I got out of it?
Yeah.
Well, Dave, we need to get David Beckham on next week then, all right? Right. Patricia, we'll end up with this one. We could talk forever, but I love to leave them wanting more, and maybe
thank you,
in a while forward, when you're doing other things, we'd love to have you back on again. What are you acting in next, Ian? Is there anything in the pipeline? She does hope it's comedy. You would be brilliant.
You just made my day. Thank you, Patricia. I wish. No, it's not actually. I'm playing a very dodgy. I'm not going to give it away, but I'm playing a very dodgy character. I'm flying off to Budapest in a few weeks, and I'll be doing a drama. And that's all I can say about it. So I'm playing another dodgy character, but I do write comedy, and I'm shooting my first independent movie in June. It's called Boland's Shoes, and it's all about a fan of Mark Boland, of which I am one of. And there's comedy in that. But I'm trying to also sell a sitcom at the moment, which I'm hoping to do, but nothing in the immediate future. But thank you for your
you never tempted to go back to your roots, to a bit of alternative comedy? You never tempted to get up on stage and
give a bit of Welsh farming then? I thought for a minute, Dave.
I'd love it, Dave. But do you know what? I'll be honest. I'll be cruel to myself. I wasn't that good. I wasn't as funny as my contemporaries. And I thought, I'll leave them to it. And I sort of retired quite disgracefully at the Comedy Store. It was the last night of the Comedy Store in London. It was the first Comedy Store because they've now moved. And I was asked to, I don't know whether Arthur was performing that night. I was asked to do a 5-minute piece, and I died to death in front of
Oh, no. That's all it would take, wouldn't it? That would destroy you. And they all have.
I swear, Harry, I walked off the stage having died, and I walked downstairs. I walked out of the venue. I wrote a little note to my friend who was driving us, and I put the little note under the windscreen saying I just retired, and I walked home from Soho to Muswell Hill, I think. And I never performed again, and that was a long time ago. So I don't think I've got the nerve or the love for it anymore.
although every comedian and stand-up comedian felt what you felt at some point. That's the thing. It's whether you come out the other side, but you haven't done it all badly, to be honest.
I think we get Ian today, so thank you very much. You've inspired.
It's been amazing. Just hang on at the end. At the end and just after. So I just want to say goodbye to you privately as well, Dave. All right, and wait after the thing. But guys, wonderful questions. Thank you so much. You saw his Twitter coming up, so I will just put that on again very quickly. There's Ian's Twitter. You might want to follow him on that side of things. That's Puleston Davies, at Puleston Davies. And if there's anything, so you get I'm sure you can leave things on there for further information and whatever. But in the meantime, thank you Very much. This is where the production team, they're so slow, you see. This is what happens. And then I press the wrong button and it takes me ages to get back. But it's been emotional. Come back to
it would be even worse.
Yeah. Well, I'm blaming it on your OCD. You didn't do your toggle enough. All right. Oh, God. I'll be in trouble now.